Hi y'all, this is RSOPerator from RadicalSurvivalism.com. Today I want to talk to you about chicken coop planning, repair, and upkeep. Alright, when we start thinking about raising chickens, one of the first problems we need to address is our chicken coop. Are we going to build our own chicken coop, or are we going to purchase a chicken coop from a retailer that's pre-built? No matter which way you go, I think it's really important to remember that making that initial purchase for either a pre-built coop or for materials to build isn't going to be your only expenditure with regard to your coop. There is upkeep and maintenance all along the way, and no matter how you build, no matter how awesome your engineering and the chicken coop is, you're still going to have to deal with this reality that there is going to be repairs and upkeep along the way. Some of the things to keep in mind with regard to what tends to break or wear on a chicken coop. Your chicken wire, eventually the galvanized coating wears off and it begins to rust, and then it becomes brittle, and then your chickens start to escape their run. Another thing that happens is chicken coops generally are built of wood, and wood eventually gets wet enough it rots. Whether you're going to buy a pre-built chicken coop or build your own, your chicken coop's going to need to be painted or already has paint on it. The weather beats the paint, and eventually the paint starts to chip, and their chicken coop will need to be repainted. And the last thing I want to mention is the roof. No matter how well you build the roof, no matter how well it's engineered, eventually you're going to have to deal with a leak or some sort of issue that causes you to climb up on top and do something with regard to changing or improving the roof. Generally speaking, something that I've found pretty universal is that store-bought chicken coops have some really cool features sometimes, but generally aren't built as well and as strong as a home-built chicken coop can be. If you like some of the bells and whistles that the store-bought coops have, to do what we did, and that is go into a farm store and spot a chicken coop that you like and take some photos. Go home and take a look at those photos and sort of reverse engineer what they've done with regard to the feature you like, and just incorporate it into your own home-built coop. That way you'll get those cool features that you really like, but you'll get the ruggedness of a coop that you built with better materials than what's provided in a store-bought coop. And the reason that happens, the reason the store-bought coops generally aren't built as well, is because they're built somewhere and shipped to the stores, and therefore shipping weight, anytime you add weight to a product that you need to ship, it costs more to ship it. So generally what they do is use the lightest weight materials they possibly can get away with to construct the store-bought coop, so they can ship it for as least amount of money as they can to get them into the stores. That doesn't translate well into durability when you're going to set this thing out into the weather, into the wind, into the storms, into the snow, and see how it's going to hold up against the elements. Again, you're way better off to just find some features that you want your coop to have and build your coop yourself. You are going to need some basic carpentry skills if you're going to want to tackle building your own chicken coop. You're going to want to know how to run a drill. You're going to want to know how to run a circular saw, and when to use your plywood blade and when to use your standard tooth blade. You're probably going to want to know how to run a jigsaw and to be able to cut your flooring in with it. You're definitely going to want to know how to swing a hammer. You're going to want to know when to pick a nail and when to pick a screw in terms of putting things together so they stay the best and stay the longest. If you don't have these skills right now, and you're interested in building your chicken coop yourself, look up somebody who has some of these skills, a handyman, or someone who's done construction, and let them show you. Let them look over your shoulder. Even pay them a little bit. Let them look over your shoulder and kind of help you with this one project, and start to develop these skills and have these tools that you need at your disposal anyway. I mean, if you're going to do the preparedness thing, you're going to be a prepper. There's nothing wrong with developing some new skills and to be able to use those at a later time when called upon. With regard to what goes inside your chicken coop, there's a few things that are absolutely important, and things you're definitely going to want in there. One of them being a good spot to place your waterer. The second being a good spot to place your feeder. And the third thing you're going to want are nesting boxes. I mentioned the waterer because if you're not cautious in how you place your waterer, you'll have the issue that we had as newbies, and that You place a waterer inside the chicken coop, pretty much anywhere you want. What happens is the chickens get on top of it, and then while they're roosting there, defecate in the water, ruining the water, causing you to have to change out the water way too often. Whatever spot you pick in there for your chicken waterer, build it in such a way where if the chickens are able to get on top or above the water, there's something built in there where they can't defecate directly into the waterer itself. And kind of the same thing goes for the feeder, whatever feeder that you go with. You want to place the feeder in the chicken coop in such a way where the chickens, no matter what size they are, can get to the food. But also you want to make it as difficult as you possibly can for mice to get into the food, because everywhere that mice eat, mice defecate. And the last thing you want your chickens to do is, while they're eating, to be actually eating mouse droppings. That's really bad. So any way that you can design or incorporate your feeder area into your chicken coop, try to keep that in mind. Try to keep the mice out of it. Try to make sure that the feeder's in there in such a way where no matter what size bird you have, it can still eat. And also, again, try to design it in such a way, try to design the space in such a way where your birds are least likely to defecate into their food, because if they can, they probably will. All right, along with this intro, I also grabbed some video footage of our chicken coop as it stands today. The point in showing you this isn't to show you what the world's greatest chicken coop in the world is, because that's not what it is. When we built our coop, we were at the very beginning of our prepper thing as a family. This was one of the first things we did, is build a chicken coop and add chickens. And I think there are some things that we did with our coop that are really cool and worked out really well. And I think there are some things that we did with ours that if I had a chance to do it all over, I would definitely do differently. And of course, you will see in the video footage coming up here that there's some maintenance that has been started and there's some maintenance that needs to be done. And I want to show you this because that is the reality of a backyard farm. That is the reality of prepping, and that is the reality of putting a wooden structure outside in your backyard and let the elements beat it day in and day out. Reality here is that it's not going to last forever, and it is going to need repairs. And if it's yours, you're going to need to either organize some sort of way to get those repairs done, or get out there and do them yourself. I hope the video footage coming up is useful with regard to those points. All right, so we've had the coop up for several years now. I think it's about 4 or 5 years old, and we're starting to run into some minor repair issues. First thing being the weather is just beating the finish to pieces. We did use a good primer and a good paint, a good outdoor paint for the coop, but that being said, we live in the country. The wind out here is harsh through the winter. The temperature swings are pretty drastic, so the finish is pretty worn. It's going to probably this year, it's going to need a scrape and a paint. The fence also, the chicken wire in the fence is beginning to rust, and I'm getting spots are developing toward the bottom where I'm seeing that it's becoming brittle, and the chickens are poking and pecking, and they're able to, occasionally to get out. So I have, if you can see, I have a number of repair spots where I've grafted in sections of chicken wire to get it through the winter. Now that we're starting spring, I most likely will also change out all the chicken wire. And in doing that, I'm also going to switch out some of these steel posts for some 4x4 wood posts, especially back here on the back corners. I'm going to bury those in concrete and actually add a door. Not having an external door on the coop was a design flaw, and that was my fault for not stopping the construction of this when we did it and insisting we put in a door. But it was one of our, this coop was one of our first prepper projects in our backyard here. It's a very large chicken coop, as you can see. It's in the realm of 20 feet by about 5 feet, I believe, in terms of the floor plan. And again, I've mentioned in some Facebook post that we do have solar lights all the way around it that light it up at night. That's so I can identify predators. Predators at night from the back deck. From the back deck, I have a clear shot out here with a rifle. So as long as I have some light out here on my target, that being a predator, I can get it. We do have electricity on the inside and outside of the chicken coop. I have lights inside, heat light, heated waterer for the winter. So basically, I don't have to worry about making sure the chicken's water doesn't freeze. As long as that heated waterer is working, we're good. And this is the repair I did today. It's just a trim board, obviously, but because it also functions as a base for the old school farmer's latch. Well, the weather on the trim piece actually, it weathered really bad and became brittle, and then the pressure against the door eventually it broke the original piece, the original trim piece. And of course, it was in the middle of winter when that happened, so here we are finally getting into spring, and I'm able to replace it. One of the design flaws as well that I'll show you is when we installed the roof on the coop, we didn't leave enough overhang, obviously, and because of that, I think what we've got is water getting in underneath the top horizontal trim and causing that trim to weather and become rotten. So that's the next piece that's going to be traded out, and I'm going to have to come up with some sort of a rudimentary plan to fix that roof so it has a little bit more of an overhang, so we can keep the water off this trim, and I won't have to come out here every 3 or 4 years and change the trim out. Obviously we used plywood for the external sheeting. We probably should have went ahead and bought the more expensive barn siding, but we didn't. We had some extra plywood, we used it, and of course, when you don't use the right material for the right job, really, you end up with a repair sooner than what you should, and that's what we're looking at. So again, a few of these things would have been resolved if we would have taken just a little bit more time with our plan for the coop before we built, rather than sort of tearing into it and building it from a friend's mental image of what he remembered a chicken coop that he had built previously. One of the other issues also that I ran into is the foundation style that we used. I'm just not satisfied with, and I've had to adjust it a couple times to keep things level. And once again, because of the shifting ground and the different temperature swings out here, it's unlevel again. So it's becomes a matter of bringing out a couple jacks and lifting the coop up, and this time, instead of readjusting this bizarre series of vertical footers, I think I'm going to build a more substantial level foundation, and this time the repair will be the final repair, rather than keep continually trying to fix this footer that just isn't. I don't think it's appropriate for this this size of chicken coop. All right, so I just finished clearing out the volunteer shrubbery that was growing inside the run from last year. Last year was a very busy year for us here at RS, and it was really tough to get out here and get some of these chores done, and the shrubbery inside here, the volunteer shrubbery, got out of control. So now that the ground's nice and wet here in spring, I just finished about a 15 to 20 minute job of yanking it all up by the root and throwing it outside of the run so we can start fresh this spring. And of course, the chickens are loving it because they're going from hole to hole and finding fishworms. And you'll notice as I point the camera to the west here, I put these trees in a row. And then, of course, there'll be a second row of trees staggered. You can see one here, but it died. The idea here is we get a lot of west wind, and these trees grow very quickly. They come from our flower beds around the house. These grow very quickly, so anytime I find them in the flower beds, I move them from the flower beds to the west side of the run here to, within a few years, hopefully we'll block a big chunk of this west wind, making it a little more tolerable in the wintertime for the for the chickens. Wind blockers are good. All right, that's it for chicken coop planning, repair, and upkeep. I hope there is something here that you can grab a hold of in terms of helping out with your chicken coop project. If you want to see more prepper videos, you can do that. Check us out at radicalsurvivalism.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm very active there. You can do that at twitter.com/radsurvival. And of course, not only can you check out our videos on our YouTube channel, but you can also check them out on Facebook. We post our videos there as well. So until next time, take care.